Welcome to Routing for Success, the show where we interview today's top logistics professionals, giving them a platform to share their stories and best practices. Today we are talking with Lee and Keely Muse. Lee and Keely are contractors for FedEx Ground via their company, Tread Transportation Services, which operates on the Linehaul side of the business. In this episode, we discuss how they built up their company from zero to more than 40 trucks today, most of which were accomplished through the use of RFIs, submitting RFIs to FedEx for new growth opportunities. We also talk about their other business, Forward Arrow Solutions, which offers FedEx business brokering and consulting services, and software, which includes things like payroll, maintenance tracking, driver scheduling, and more. I'm pleased to present to you my conversation with Lee and Keely Muse. All right, we're here with Keely and Lee Muse. Obviously, we'll get into your FedEx business. You also have another software business that supports not only your FedEx operations, but also other contractors as well. So we'll definitely want to talk about that. To start off, though, let's talk about each of you. Tell us a little bit about yourselves and your life leading up to becoming a FedEx contractor.
Yeah, I guess I'll kind of get us kicked off here, but I got an engineering degree, was doing engineering construction. So moving around different construction job sites year to year. So as we started having kids, that got harder and harder. So kids said, well, you just settle down, then maybe we can, I can run some FedEx trucks on the side. We'll get into how she knew about that here in a second. And then that just kind of, grew and grew from there. That was my background, doing that, had some good experiences dealing with, safety situations, working with construction personnel, crunching data, some things that have helped me, in this business. But that was kind of, my background. I always wanted to get into something on my own one day, like a lot of people that are, either contractors now or looking to become contractors or some other kind of business owners for themselves, instead of, people can get tired of that corporate ladder and feeling like all the hard work's going to somebody else. So, I always had that vision, but wasn't sure exactly what that was going to look like. And I'll kind of let Keely fill it in from there.
Yeah, so that started in the FedEx business. My dad was a FedEx contractor as well. And he'd kind of been a serial entrepreneur his whole life. And had a business that went under and kind of was like, you know what? I don't have a lot of options. I'm going to go get my CDL and become a truck driver. And so that's what he did. And his first job was run a team for a FedEx contractor. And within about, maybe a year and a half, he ended up buying out his contractor and started running the business. So he did that for a while. And then, like Lee said, we were moving around a lot for his job. And wanted to try to stay put somewhere. And so my dad just was kept after me, like, you know what, you really should just run some trucks. And if you just ran a couple trucks, then you wouldn't have to move around so much. And that would be, something good for you guys to get into. So that was the plan. And that's what we did. We started with 2 trucks up in Dallas. And then when the Houston hub opened, we were able to get those transferred down to Houston. And started with 2 and started running in the beginning of 2017.
2017. Okay. And so Keely, you actually got into the business yourself before Lee was involved. And there was a gap of a few years where you were running the business and Lee, you weren't really involved at all, right?
Right. Other than what I heard about when I came home.
You got an earful, that's for sure.
So you picked up a couple trucks, and this is on the line haul side of the business, and I'm sure that most of the people tuning in are probably aware, but for the few who aren't, FedEx Ground has 2 separate divisions within it. There's the first and last mile, what we call pickup and delivery. So those are the smaller vans that you see around town, picking up and delivering packages. And then there's the line haul side of the business where, you have a Class 8 tractor doing what's called drop and hook. So hooking up to the FedEx box and bringing it from one point to another long distance. So you're on that the latter of those 2 called line haul. So Keely, how did you get those first 2 trucks? Did you just call FedEx and did they say, hey, buy trucks and we've got some business for you? Or did you have to buy an existing business coming in?
So I actually bought 2 of my dad's routes. So he sold them to me and was, kind of helped me to get on my feet a little bit. And so that's how we started with those two. And then after that, it was all organic growth for a while. When we moved into that Houston hub, it was a new hub, and they were, looking for contractors and needing contractors to take on more routes. And so that was a good move for us, was to be able to get into a new hub that was just opening and helped us to grow our business more quickly than we would have been able to in some of the other locations. So yeah.
Yeah, I think at the time we didn't really realize, how important that was, how rare that is to be at a brand new facility, especially a hub, where you can see, growth pretty quickly. So I know that's kind of what a lot of contractors we've learned over the years, will target trying to get new areas like that because of that growth opportunity that comes along with it. So yeah, it just worked out pretty well for us, being in the right place at the right time.
So tell us a little bit more about that. A lot of the people tuning into this podcast will want to know, how do I grow? If I get into this thing, or if I'm already in this thing, wherever my business is today, I have hopes to grow it to something bigger and better in the future. So tell us about how you benefited from that. So you were in Houston, which was a brand new hub, and that afforded you some growth opportunities. What did that actually look like?
Yeah. So when we were down in Houston, there was just such a huge need for growth. They were trying to even pull, I think, contractors in from, the other hubs in Texas, Dallas and Fort Worth, trying to put out unassigned growth opportunities. So for that, we were submitting RFIs, trying to get the opportunities, which just, involves submitting the questionnaire and then having a meeting with the senior Linehaul manager and, explaining how you're positioned for growth and, what your plans are for the future. So it was super beneficial to get those growth opportunities. And then along with that, with it being a new hub, there were a lot of assigned opportunities as well. So whenever, with the points and post-peak, they were putting out assigned opportunities for contractors to bid on. And we were fortunate to be able to take advantage of that too.
So they put out these opportunities and you submit an RFI. Can you give us a couple nuggets, like what makes a good RFI? It seems like you were successful and other people weren't. Presumably you had some competition, multiple organizations submitting RFIs who want to bid on those opportunities, and you ended up winning. How did you win?
Well, I think a lot of it is just positioning yourself for that growth. So a lot of times we would, if we only had 2 contract opportunities, we would try to, maybe have an extra truck and have extra drivers available so that if the HUD called us and needed something covered, we were able to cover that. And so in our RFI, we can, put that down. Let's say we have extra trucks, we've got an extra driver, we're already positioned to take on this growth. And I think that helps a lot if you're not starting from scratch when it comes to growth.
Yeah, there's always a little bit of that, where you want to be able to have some extra trucks, on the network if you can. Obviously, they need to be able to run so that it's not just, something costs for your company. But if you are able to, put an extra truck or 2 on and keep them running, a lot of it's just relationships, calling around to, maybe some other stations besides just your hub, getting to know some people there, and, maybe they won't have anything the first couple of times you call them, but, eventually they'll get used to you calling and just build that relationship from there. And, sooner or later they're going to be in a jam and need some help. So that's definitely a good way to approach it. And, the timing was good for us too, because I think, we've been at it long enough to have a pretty good idea of how things operated, but we're still new enough that we were, had a little more energy and excitement about the whole thing. It was real new to us. So I think that maybe kind of played out too. I think, some of the FedEx management was able to see that, just how, involved we were in the company and, how much we were really wanting to see it grow and succeed.
It's funny. I see that all the time in, not just in FedEx, but in other jobs too. You hire a brand new salesperson and they're naive, but they're really excited. And they actually come across opportunities that maybe some other senior people would overlook or not even go after because they're too smart. But it ends up actually benefiting the new person. So,
Sure.
okay, so you have assigned runs and unassigned runs. You're talking about adding unassigned trucks. So you buy the truck or you lease the truck, you hire a driver who's expecting to get paid so they can feed their family. You don't necessarily have guaranteed work for them. So you're talking not only to the station that you're in, but you're calling surrounding stations and just trying to network with those managers and really let them know, hey, if you have any volume, package volume that needs to get moved, call us. We want to help you solve that problem. You do well. They end up calling you. You perform well. You get them out of a bind, and they start to rely on you. And so when those opportunities for assigned runs come up, which is really where you make the good money, it seems, you're top of mind. The RFIs come in and they recognize your name and say, "Oh, we already know, that Keely and Lee, they do a good job." So that gives you a little bit of an advantage in that RFI process. Am I understanding that correctly?
It can work out that way. A lot of times the original one you're talking about reaching out to those stations, a lot of times they're just non-contracted spare trucks that you're able to put in the system and keep them running. You're not even on an unassigned rotation sometimes, and that's why you're scrambling to make those calls. And then they can put out a growth opportunity and ask for RFI for, an unassigned position that you might be applying for there, and say, okay, I already got this truck to run the network. In some cases they do post assigned runs that way too, but a lot of those are more of the bid process.
Okay, that makes sense. So you came in with a few trucks, had opportunities to submit RFIs because Houston was growing very quickly. You're able to capitalize on some of those opportunities. Tell us a little bit about your growth trajectory. If you could walk us through, and just very, you don't have to be pinpoint accurate, but how many trucks were you operating kind of each year over the past few years?
Yeah, so when we started, the two trucks we started with, they were both teen trucks. And then our operation in Houston is primarily teens. And so I would say, we got, within the first year down in Houston, we've gotten 2 more opportunities. And then it just kind of started to snowball from there. I think it was around, I don't know, maybe a year or 2 that my dad decided to, he was like, you know what, I'm done with the FedEx business. And he knew Lee was going to be coming on board. And so he's like, you know what, I think it's a good time for you guys to buy me out. So we went that route and then had trucks in Dallas and in Houston about the time that Lee came on board. So because of that, we, probably more than doubled our trucks. Yeah. Right.
Several years in a row.
Yeah.
Had years where we more than doubled, at least the revenue and probably the truck count as well. Obviously that slowed at some point as we got bigger and just got established in those locations. But it was quite a bit of growth there.
And for the most part, we did have that, transaction with my dad. And then we picked up some runs that we purchased here and there. But for the most part, any of our growth that we've had over the last few years has been mostly organic through that, the growth opportunity RFI process.
It seems like that would be a better way to do it, right? I mean, if you have an assigned run, you can either be purchasing that assigned run from someone who's already operating it. And so not only will you have to bring a truck, not only will you have to bring a driver, but in that instance, you'll also have to just pay kind of, what we call blue sky, just money out of your pocket into the existing contractor's pocket to get the rights to that run. Or if you submit an RFI, you still have to bring a truck, you still have to bring a driver. There's some startup cost there, but you don't have that blue sky kind of payment. You save yourself that money, right?
Right.
Yeah, and I know talk to different people that have different philosophies there. I mean, some of them will say, I've been doing this long enough. I'm not going to start over trying to do unassigned, and especially if it's an established hub, it can be pretty difficult to transition those over to assigned, depending on how many trucks are there, how many contractors are there, how long everybody's had their runs, what the growth looks like in that market area. So some people will just say, you know what, I'd rather pay that money and get the assigned run instead of fighting that battle for X number of years. Because there are challenges with unassigned runs, throughout the network. And, like I said, drivers are counting on a paycheck to feed their family and pay their bills. So, if they're not getting the runs, then that makes it difficult. You're either paying them money to keep them there, keep them whole, as long as you can. But, then that that impacts how efficient your operation is. So, I know people that are on both sides of it. Some people say, hey, we're just going to get as many unassigned as we can and convert what we can and manage it from there. And, maybe you spend some of that money paying those drivers rather than purchasing the assigned runs. And, whereas other people will just rather go to the assigned.
So what's some advice that you can offer to the contractors listening in who want to grow their business and start submitting RFIs? What's some advice you could offer to them? We've already talked about how to win the opportunity, but you had mentioned your business went through some serious growth, and I'm not a FedEx contractor, so I've never owned one of these businesses. But putting myself in the mindset of you're going to take your operation today and 1 year from now, it's going to be twice the size. Man, that sounds daunting in some ways, and big room to make mistakes. What were some mistakes that you made during that growth process, and what are some lessons that you learned?
I don't think we made it. No.
I think some of the mistakes that we made, in especially those 2020 and 2021, there was a lot of growth opportunities happening, and we were kind of throwing our name in the hat for all different market areas. And I think looking back, if we'd have done just maybe some more research in the areas, maybe we would have chosen differently. Your maintenance costs may be more expensive in some markets than they are in others. It's harder to recruit in some areas. Your payroll is going to be higher. Your insurance costs are going to be higher. So
just the Linehaul operation in general, that's something we noticed going to different markets is, actually on the FedEx side that we were used to them calling, once a week for unassigned teams in some markets. Now in some markets they're calling daily or, just, different kind of processes that they had on some of these runs that we weren't necessarily used to. So yeah, definitely a combination of things, both on the FedEx side and those other items Keely mentioned.
Yeah. So, and then when we do have these meetings now, I feel like, I asked a lot more questions than I did before from the manager as far as, what is your run rotation like? What kind of volume do you guys see? What are your heaviest days? Just things like that. How many other trucks are on the rotation? Just questions that I didn't know to ask before. I was just excited to have the opportunity and to get into a different market. And now we're a little bit more careful and ask for a lot more information before we commit to anything else.
And what about things like insurance costs and maintenance costs, driver labor rates? Do you just talk to existing contractors in a new area to conduct your research, or do you have other ways that you get that information?
So some of it is, you can kind of, look and talk to other contractors, see, what they're offering. I would say for the insurance costs, we talked to our broker about that. It's really the workers' comp that varies, quite a bit from state to state when it comes to the rates. And then just calling up the shops in the area, and just kind of getting to know them, or just looking to see, is there a Freightliner dealership close, or is it Volvo, or trying to determine, what type of trucks we put in a certain area. It really just comes down to maintenance for us.
Yeah, what kind of operation we're looking to have as far as management, and that might affect lease versus owner and some different factors there as well, or maintenance costs in general. Maybe in some cases it it's better to have a fully operational lease, maintenance included, especially if you're not familiar with the area, you don't have an established manager. Those are some decisions you can make there. And then also just looking at job postings, that's the biggest thing for labor, and to see what other contractors are paying drivers. Hey, this is the exact run we'd be hiring for. They're paying X. A lot of times you can find that in the job posting, and obviously in the FedEx network, gives you a very good indication of what people are paying, but also outside of the FedEx network too. What drivers are making in that area.
So going back to your growth, I understand in talking with each of you before we had hopped online here, Lee, I think you had mentioned that your largest point as a business was maybe during the pandemic, maybe around 2021, and you've actually downsized somewhat since then. What was the number? What was the maximum number of trucks that you were running?
We're right around 50.
50.
Yeah, about 50 trucks. And so, yeah, we're down to 40, 42 right now. So, we scaled back more than that, but then we've added back since then too. So just kind of, trying to optimize things from market area and geography and things like that is what we've been doing.
So how do you determine, if there's an area that you kind of want to divest from, you want to get rid of it and downsize, versus other areas that you actually want to invest into and grow your business? What's the difference between those for you?
I mean, it's kind of what we talked about earlier, what we got into, for us, it was trial and error more than anything. We got into these markets, said, okay, FedEx runs things a little bit different. Our costs are higher. Just we're not as close to be able to manage the business, like we have in the past as far as being on site, meeting with drivers, being at the terminal, meeting with management as often. So, there were just several factors there that played in for us. And like I said, since then, we've learned that maybe there's other ways to do that research ahead of time, kind of like we've been talking about, rather than just diving in and finding out that way. But obviously, you learn a lot doing it that way as well.
What are some other lessons that you've learned or best practices that you've been able to identify? I mean, you've been at this for a while now. You're running about 44 trucks today. You've learned what areas you like to be in and what areas you aren't. So we talked about, obviously you've honed in your list of questions, for example, that you would ask to FedEx or an existing contractor if you're going into a new area. There's trucks, there's people, and kind of operational efficiency. I think the operational efficiency might be more relevant on the P&D side of things, but you could tell me if I'm off base on that. Relationships with people at FedEx, that seems to matter a lot, especially these days. What are some other areas that you feel like you're particularly strong in and that you might have some advice to offer to other contractors?
Go for
it. Well, I think it was just one of those things where as we grew, and you talk about kind of like optimizing and things like that, we got to a point where we were able to kind of outsource some things that we were kind of doing on our own. I know, when we came on board, the first thing I was like, okay, I want you to handle recruiting and maintenance. Like, I don't want to talk to truck shops anymore. And, I think it would be better if, you talked to the new drivers too. So I think just kind of figuring out your strengths and what you can focus on and what's best for your business, and then being able to outsource, some of that other stuff. So I know we use, some different software products or recruiting tools or things like that. And I think that has been helpful for our business as we grow.
Yeah, and just, growing our management staff internally too. Just take things off our plate. We were, there for first few years, it was just two of us basically doing it all, which, obviously, you can make good margins that way, but you're also losing a lot of sleep and, dealing with a lot of stress in different ways. And you grow to a certain point, you just need more help. So, and as far as that goes too, I mean, it's one of those things where, you kind of have to look forward a little bit to see where you're trending and how things are going for you. Because, if you wait until you're just swamped and buried to try and bring somebody on, they're going to have a learning curve and you're going to have to spend some time training them and all that. So the sooner you can recognize and commit to bringing somebody like that on, I think the better, so that you can, try and get them in a good position to really help you and take some off your plate as a contractor.
There's two things that you just talked about that I want to dive a little bit deeper into. The first one is, so how many stations are you running in today, and what is your management structure, the hierarchy of your company, and how you divide, the day-to-day tasks to your staff?
So right now we're running out of 5 different locations. But all of our management is typically based on geography. So the bulk of our trucks are in Houston, and so we have a manager for each location. So we've got a couple down in Houston, and then in our Dallas Fort Worth operations, we have 2 managers up there. So we found that that's kind of the best strategy for us is to be able to divide it by location with that.
So what does a day in the life look like for each of you now running this business?
It's changed a lot over the years. So now, though, I think, like Lee said, with us having some management in place, we also have recruiters on staff and some back office help as well. So at this point for us, it's just kind of just making sure that everything is operating smoothly. We're not as in the weeds as we used to be on a day-to-day basis, which is definitely nice. But for a long time, I mean, that was our day to day, was dealing with all the maintenance and headaches and stuff that would come up, and then getting phone calls at 2:00 in the morning too. And day in and day out, we always talk about where we have the flexibility where we can go on vacations or work from anywhere, but we don't really take vacations. We just work from someplace different.
Right.
And so that's how it was for a long time. But these days, things have kind of settled out a little bit, which is nice.
It's where you want to get to as a business owner. So
Absolutely.
that was the first one. The second one I wanted to drill into a little bit further, and this is probably a good segue into talking about your other business. You had mentioned that there are some services and some other ways that you've been able to outsource some of the stuff that has to get done. Go ahead and name drop a few. I think people are curious to hear about what products and services do successful contractors use. What are some that you are using that you can speak to and you feel like have helped you with your business?
Well, I know over the years, I mean, like she said, that she kind of put me in charge of recruiting when I stepped in. So we've done everything from, posting job ads ourselves, taking those calls, to, outsourcing it to different recruiting vendors. So, and a lot of it with recruiting was just, we'd try this for a little while, it would work for a little while, and then, it would kind of trickle to the stop. So then we pivot and try something else and try something different. I know there's several different vendors out there on the recruiting side, Square One, Bright Flag, Ansel, and a few others. So, I know we've used several of those. Trying to think what else really that started outsourcing.
I feel like it's kind of evolved over the years.
Yeah.
In the beginning, we were using lots of different vendors, and then part of the reason that we started our software was because we felt like we could take all of the vendors that we were using and combine it into one platform where we wouldn't have to use so many different people.
And that's the main reason we started building software, because several years ago, you can just go back a few years, and there really wasn't anything out there to help contractors break down their settlements, track things, and do payroll. That was the biggest thing people were looking for, is easier way to do payroll than running off Excel sheets. So that was kind of the first thing we focused on, especially seeing all that growth. That was definitely a pain point during that time, when you go from 5-6 employees to 30, 40 plus. Then that's a big change for your weekly payroll operation process. So that was the main thing we focused on originally, to solve that problem. We were doing payroll in QuickBooks for a while, and then that's one thing that's itself on the vendor side, is integrating our payroll processor with our benefits, so that everything's synced there, and the deductions get taken into account when people change their benefits or 401k or anything like that. So that's been a big help as well.
So the name of your software business is called Forward Arrow Solutions. And it's fascinating to me that you would approach this business, and you're in trucking, right? Trucking is very real world physical asset. I mean, you're talking about, truck drivers and these things driving over the road, maintaining them and diesel fuel. To go from that to doing something like having a software company, I mean, it's completely different to me. So tell us a little bit more about that. So what were some of the challenges that you were experiencing in the business that you just felt like you couldn't solve with other options that were currently out there? And then walk us through the story of how you founded this other company.
Yeah, I mean, I guess real quick before we get straight into that, just one thing you said about, the truck driving business, and you don't think of it as a software based business, or, that's not the first thing you think of, at least from the outside looking in. But, getting back to our growth, we feel like that was kind of the reason why we were well positioned there, is because we saw the vast change, variety of contractors out there. You had guys that had driven for 30 years that had a couple trucks and were real focused on, that aspect of the business. And then you had, more of the investor types, or, somebody, with a corporate engineering background, maybe that's, used to processing a lot of data and looking through software and doing things like that. So we felt like that, to handle all the reporting and compliance that comes along with being a contractor, I feel like that might have given us an advantage in some cases over some others. But yeah, as far as what we were trying to solve, like I said, it all started with payroll. Just trying to be as accurate and quick as possible. It got very cumbersome doing it the way we were originally doing it. And then, I know Keely would have to, once we did finally get all the way through payroll, make sure everything was checked and verified, we had all the final numbers. I guess she was using QuickBooks Online and having to type it all in one by one. And of course, one of the kids would come up and distract her or something, and she'd look up and have to start all over. And she'd be like, I've had about enough of this. So that was definitely a pain point for us there. So we built something where we could, get the information from the settlement as far as, who was on what trips, apply, rates, bonuses, things like that very quickly. And then distribute that to our drivers. They get text and an email when that's complete, so they can check that earnings report and check it for accuracy. And, we want the drivers, first of all, we want to know that the driver is getting paid. We want them to know that their check is correct as well, because that was almost the number one thing to hear from drivers from other contractors calling us is, hey, they're messing with my pay. I'm not getting paid what I should. I'm like, well, they may or they may not be, but at the end of the day, you don't know for sure that you're getting paid. So let's find a way to, handle that. So we wanted some more transparency with the drivers, and that's helped too. They'll spot things that maybe we weren't aware of. That the Linehaul dispatch them didn't show up in our settlement. So that was, they would help flag some of that for us on that side. So that was the biggest thing we wanted to tackle early on.
So for the FedEx Ground contractors, Linehaul contractors listening in, for Forward Arrow Solutions, the software that company that you built specifically for FedEx Ground Linehaul contractors, what are some questions, that might lead them to know whether or not this is something that they should explore using? Like what types of people or what types of challenges might they be experiencing where they may actually want to go check out Forward Arrow Solutions?
Yeah, one of our big goals is, like Keely said, trying to consolidate. We were using a lot of different platforms, and I think everybody's feeling that right now. You got an app for this and a website for that, and you're going to 10 different places every day trying to consolidate things. So we trying to really pull as much of that into one place as possible, cut down on, any additional vendor costs we were seeing for some of those services. And just do it all under one portal where we've got GPS on the trucks where you can see a map, just like you would through your ELD provider. We've got a dashboard that, gives you quick snapshots of KPIs and different metrics there. You can dive in and do more profitability from there, do your payroll, do your IVMRs. There's a big maintenance piece that, doing the monthly maintenance reporting is also a pretty big pain point for a lot of contractors. So we try to simplify that process as well. So, just any of those things, that was our biggest goal is, let's try and anything we can, let's pull under here rather than going to several different places, and let's organize it in a way that just makes it so much easier to run your processes and save you time, find mistakes on your settlements or areas where somebody's not fueling where they're supposed to, and you can, spot areas where you can save costs and, just save time in the process. So those were our biggest goals there.
Where can people find more information on Forward Arrow Solutions if they want to check it out?
Yeah, so we actually ended up calling the software FAST, Forward Air Solutions and Technology. So if you go to fx-fast.com, you'll find our site. Another thing we're really trying to do is we know getting into a new software system can feel overwhelming, intimidating. So we really tried to make that process as easy as possible. Free trial to start it, load some of your settlements in there, and within a few minutes you can start seeing how things would look. Using the software, viewing your settlements, looking at some of those metrics. You can set up, your payroll rates and just click of a button, see how that, how it runs payroll for you. So we just really tried to make that process as simple as possible so that, one, people can see what it looks like without investing a whole lot of time. And also when they do actually want to, use the product and different tools, that makes it really easy to set things up.
Well, Lee and Keely, I appreciate your time. Is there anything else that the two of you want to talk about while you have this platform?
We'll be at some of the conferences around, or like I said, go to the website if you want some more information. And appreciate you having us on.
Thanks for coming on. I appreciate you. Routing for Success is brought to you by AP Equipment Financing. In today's competitive market, it is essential to acquire the right trucks at a fair price and finance them in a way that makes sense for your business. Leveraging their extensive network of truck and van suppliers, the experts at AP Equipment Financing will help you locate the best deals on step vans, cutaways, panel vans, and more. Deliver them straight to your facility and finance them with low monthly installment options. Click the link in the description or visit apfinancing.com for more information. Routing for Success is an independent production of AP Equipment Financing and is in no way affiliated with or endorsed by FedEx Corporation, FedEx Ground, Amazon, or any other logistics company discussed herein. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Routing for Success.